And now, from the great state of Mississauga in Ontario, Canada, it's the Ted Wallachin Podcast. Brought to you by Tom's Place. For the finest in men's fashion, Tom's Place will suit you. And ETP Canada, providing estate administration with ease. ETP Canada. And now, here's Ted.
Christian Pritchard has been a friend and guest on my past radio program for many, many years. This is a man who wears many hats, all of which relating to food, especially Canadian cuisine. He is a cook, recipe developer, brand ambassador, teacher, and food MC. He's worked with such great chefs as Lynn Crawford, Mark McEwen, Susan Lee, and Massimo Capra. He's also the founder of the Yukon Culinary Festival in Whitehorse and Dawson City, Yukon. Christian Pritchard, good to talk to you, my friend. How are you?
Ted, I'm great. And this is really, really fun because, you know, every time I've done any sort of broadcasting with you, it's always been terrific. And it's a real honor to be doing your podcast for sure.
Well, thank you for being here. We've chatted so many times, but back in my radio days, you know, you'd have 7 minutes, 8 minutes, 9 minutes if you were lucky, and then inevitably you'd be right in the middle of a great story, and you got to break for traffic now, Ted. You know,
radio. What the hell's that?
Yeah, exactly.
True.
Conversation interruptus, as I like to call it. Well, let's for people who grew up in the Toronto area, listening to radio in Toronto, the name Pritchard is very, very well known name. Your dad, your late dad, David Pritchard, worked for Chum FM and a number of stations over the years. How much of an influence did his involvement in radio and music and the entertainment industry bleed into what you're doing now? Because you're more than a guy who prepares recipes and cooks for people. You're an entertainer.
Yeah, you know, the thing is, I miss him so much to this day, and my dad was terrific, and I'm in food because I didn't go into radio or any production or anything like that. And I got to be honest with you that for a while I really would have liked to have gone into radio and done stuff, but man, it wasn't. And I never had the thought of filling those shoes because I'm not my dad, but I am my dad, you know. Yeah. We love food, our whole family. My mom, you know, she lives out near where my family lives, and we're still, food is our life, you know. Food was the life of my dad. I got into food because it was a pure enjoyment. I went every weekend to St. Lawrence Market, and that's with my dad. At first, I think as a kid, I would come along. I had no idea how big that influence would be on me later in life, Ted. I really didn't. But boy, did I like it. I remember where I got my pizza slice, where we got, you know, I learned about fresh herbs, and, you know, we would go to Gus, the fisherman place. And, you know, my dad always, because it was the humor and the fun. I remember my dad, and I was kind of a stupid kid, obviously, but no, he would say, "Look, Christian," and there would be smoked fish. And he'd say, "See, that's what happens when you smoke." And I was like, "Oh." Like I was like, whoa. So this dried out fish. There's some, you know, older Portuguese guy at the fish monger he's hanging over there with the smokers. What are you talking about? It was just stuff like that. But the radio side of it, Ted, is like, to this day, it still blows my mind. And more importantly than that, makes me happy when people say, "Pritchard, you're not," and I'm like, "Yes." And they remember that stuff. And I think, holy shit. How long? I'm 50 years old myself. How long ago is this? And now there's the CFNY side of it with people now with my dad, and books. And it's just fantastic that it shows that what you do, and that's you and everyone that's in broadcasting, actually is making a difference. And people remember it. And I love it too, because people say, "Oh, your dad was pretty out there, right? Like, was he on drugs?" And I'm like, no, like that's my favorite thing about the whole thing. I mean, he's an OCA guy. He went to this. His love wasn't even. It was painting, and I think when he got ill, he was a mother with painting. He painted like a madman for 2 years, of which, you know, we sold some of the art, and we have a lot of it. And so the joy that's still in our house, not only, God, how many people can say that my dad's there? My kids never knew my dad, but they know my dad because there's his record that was on Island Records, the paintings, the food influence, the books. well, I'm fortunate, and it's
When
great.
did it dawn on you that this concept of being involved in food and the preparation and teaching and delivering, etc., was going to be something that you need to pursue and would end up being your lot in life?
That's a great question because, it kind of came in an interesting way. I was hired. I've always been into food and cooking, and I didn't go to culinary school for it, but I have probably more education than most now because of what I've done. But
Yeah.
I started with Loblaw companies in event coordination. And it's hilarious to say that now because event coordination is a big program in schools and it's very, very big. But when I started with that, there was myself and another guy who was, opening stores and doing all these unique things, hiring musicians, having events. And I remember a chef. Oh, isn't it funny that it's always a chef and she's in the industry? God, I'd love to tell her, like, "Go, you feel like an ass now." She said to me, "Oh, event coordinator, what do you do? Blow up balloons?" And I thought,
Yeah.
what I really thought an event coordinator was organizing chaos, like making sanity out of insanity
Hmm.
and bringing joy to people. And that's really how the food aspect came around was I got in on that side and I'm like, wow. Then I was able to start teaching cooking. And then I was at the very beginning when all the food television was really coming in. So all the chefs that I worked with through the event coordination and then the cooking schools that I worked with through Loblaw are now all the big names now, or were, I got
Hmm.
to work with them directly, and the learnings were insane. And then it sort of fused into I got, just one thing led to another. I had an opportunity to get involved in culinary tourism, and then that became, my full on passion for Italian food. I always had a passion for it, but um, I dove knee deep into that. I trained at Perugina in Perugia, Italy. That's in the center of Italy in chocolate, like with Italian chefs as a non-speaking Canadian,
Yeah.
non-speaking don't speak Italian, and they didn't care. They loved it, right? So, and working in Tuscany and working in with nonas in kitchens at agriturismos in different areas. Agriturismo is like a place you go to stay and eat and work the fields and just be one with it's been an incredible journey. I can't even describe. I don't even know how the hell I got here some days.
There's a lot of that around. It's fairly prevalent now to see chefs, big name chefs, organizing tours where they'll take you to. I know Massimo Capra has done a number of these where you take
Yeah.
you to a certain part of Italy, and here we're going to learn this type of food. We're going to be dealing with, let's say, the focus might be on seafood this time, or it might be on
Yep.
it might be on cattle, for whatever it might be on
Yeah.
meat,
Yeah.
and it's happening all around the world, and which is why I was fascinating when I thought, well, no, here's a guy, that being you, who has
Yeah.
taught classes in the Arctic and in
Yeah.
Tuscany,
In
and
the
it
same
happened to
week.
be all in the same week. And I'm thinking, how did that happen? Figure that one
Uh,
out.
you know what? I do think that sometimes too, because I had a boss who, when I first really got into the food side, I put on the chef coat and I was like, wow. And he said to me, he goes, "You look like a dentist." And I said, "Pay me like a fucking dentist."
Yeah,
Like, excuse my language, but that's what I thought. I thought, how ignorant. I thought, it's like, I'm a true believer that anyone can do these things. You just got to have the desire to
yeah,
want to do it. And that experience of the Yukon and Tuscany a week, I actually pinched myself. I was exhausted, but I was like, how did this ever happen? And the
yeah.
amazing thing was, working in the Yukon and then being in Tuscany, it was so great working with my Italian friends because they're like, wow. Because I got to tell you, people in Italy, when they think of Canada, and they know us, don't think they know we're not like the neighbors next door. They know us because there's a lot of Italians here in Canada, and they say, "Oh, where'd you come from?" I said, "I was just in the Yukon." Wow, that's the kind of places they would like to see if they came to Canada, Banff,
Yeah.
and the Yukon. Because when they think of Canada, it's not like these people living in igloos. That's stupid stuff. They think of us as like this majestic, gorgeous country. And it's the same thing, Ted. I had that moment last August when I was working in Bolzano in northern Italy, right on the border with Austria. And I'm looking over this lake, Garda Lake, and it's a freshwater lake. And I'm looking across the mountains, and it looks like British Columbia. Then you turn around and look at the village, and I'm like, no, I'm in Italy. The world is a
Hmm.
small place if you think about it that way, but
Yeah.
it's and that was that thing. That's the differentiation of cooking, local food in the Yukon, and then being in Tuscany and eating local food. And the interest that the Italians had about, well, what are you cooking there? Then they weren't. They did sound like, I hope I'm not ignorant. Was there snow? I said, no, not in the summer. It's very hot. I said, Dawson City. It said it's so far north, but I've been there when it's been 31, 32 degrees. And
So
yeah,
how did the concept of the Yukon Culinary Festival come to be?
I'm very proud, and I'm glad you asked that because it's become, and here we are in a forum where I can actually talk about this. It's become kind of a bitter pill with me because I was brought out to the Yukon in 2012 or 11, somewhere in there. And I was doing a celebrity chef dinner with some of the winners of Top Chef Canada. And the three of us, I emceed that show, and we also cooked and taught at the college there. But I was also asked by the tourism authority up there to come and speak with the local businesses in Whitehorse about culinary tourism.
Hmm.
And to them, when I came in and spoke about culinary tourism, here's that guy from Toronto. There is the attitude about Toronto, Trana. And, you know, I wanted to break that down and say, I love our country. And I think every place has a story. And I think your food here has an amazing story. They're like, well, we don't have a lot. I'm like, that you're actually willing to look at. And I
Yeah.
spoke and I spoke and I spoke. And then about my love of tourism. I said it's just as important as working in Italy. And they're like they couldn't grasp that concept. I said it is. There is amazing things here. So what happened was we decided to do a very small festival that first year, that very summer, and it was small. And then it became bigger and bigger. I did it for 5 years. I was the co-founder, and and I don't want to sound like an asshole or not grateful. I'm very grateful for the opportunity, but I'm really bothered when people bring ideas from other areas and things happen, and then people who are not involved get governor general's awards. Like I never got into business or work to get awards. I have had plenty. I have a good paying job. I have people I love to work with. But you know what? Every once in a while, sometimes you should look at the sources of people that have helped you develop. When I see all the advertising for the Yukon on the Food Network, it pisses me off because I know we were right there at the beginning.
Yeah.
And we said it could be done, and no one said it could be done. And oh, it's just that guy from Toronto, bravado, all this attitude. No, we actually did it. We did it in three major cities. I went up there, I spoke in Haines, Alaska about culinary tourism. It is happening. They're spending major money on getting people up there, but I'm not involved. And
So
I
tell me,
yeah.
that's unfortunate, but the good memories that you take from it. Tell me of some of the more interesting dishes that you
Oh,
would have sampled or prepared during those years at the Yukon Culinary Festival.
first of all, the seafood up there, the char, the Arctic char, and it's farmed and stuff,
Yeah.
but oh man. But the root vegetables are like nothing you can ever believe. They're so good because the soil being cold, the growing season is very short. And cold soil, hey, who am I talking to? I'm talking to a Ukrainian Canadian. Why are your potato right? Like beets and you like all those root veg, that's so great because of that damn good cold soil, right? It is monumental, like the Yukon potato, although created at Guelph University, that's because of that cold soil and that whole thing. It really is great. All the meals I had there. The interesting thing is, it's very difficult for us, if you will, the not indigenous. We always wanted to work with some of the game meats, that the First Nation had done, and I was fortunate to try some of that. I mean, it's unbelievable, caribou, and oh, like it's so incredible, and there's so much history up there, and just what they're able to do. And the other thing I want to cheer for to our friends up there. They need an abattoir for First Nations so they can sell their meat to regular Canadians too, because it's so healthy and they're so good with when they hunt. They use everything. So in a food capacity, you can only imagine. Dawson was the Whitehorse is like the Toronto of the North. It's big. Now you go to
Hmm.
Dawson, it's like honestly, it's like landing on the moon for a guy from Toronto. You come in and you land on a gravel runway originally, and you're like, this is insane, amazing. Come out and I remember being there during solstice when you're working all day, and then you come out of a bar at 4 in the morning and it was sunlight.
Yeah.
And you're like, and they said it was amazing. I remember I got to play in a bar. I played bass guitar, and someone said Christian plays bass. So I got up and played with this band. And Ted, it looked like that scene in the very first Star Wars '77 where the Millennium Falcon was picked up. That kind of bar, you know. Again, these are the adventures. It kind of goes full circle back to my dad. I'm like, God, I wish I could tell him that story. you know?
Christian Pritchard is my guest. Some people, when you talk to about the concept of fusion,
Yeah,
mixing different kinds of foods, get totally turned off. While other people think, well, you know what? If you can take a little bit of that and a little bit of that and mix it together, and create something totally new, that's a great idea. Because I'm thinking to myself, the time that you spent in Italy, the things that you learned in places like Tuscany, and the things that you learned in places like Dawson City and
yeah,
Whitehorse, and combining their indigenous foods and the indigenous foods
yeah.
of Tuscany, you could create some killer meals. Like I'm just thinking, pasta with mousse,
Oh
for
yeah,
example.
absolutely. That's the kind of stuff's been done. I'm actually flying out to June is Italian Heritage Month. Here's the Canadian guy doing Italian Heritage Month. How fun is that? I'm flying out to Alberta, and how another great story. Going into a place called the Water Tower Grill. A friend owns it there. It's in an abandoned water tower. They built a restaurant. He said, let's do an Italian meal for 100. I said, let's do a twist. We're going to do Italian roots, so all the great ingredients from Italy, Canadian hearts. So I'm getting a Berkshire pork from Alberta, beef from Alberta, all the great root veg. A lot of the, Eastern Europeans who settled in that area, so their farming is insane good. The stuff they bring in, that's fusion to me, and it's not even
Yeah,
that complicated. Like
yeah.
Massimo Capra, and I know he's a good buddy of yours from doing this show too. And I idolize the guy, and I love him as a friend, but I idolize him as a cook. And we're doing an event on June 19th at his restaurant. Same concept, Italian roots, Canadian hearts. But the idea is I'll do the Italian food and Massimo will do the Canadian food. And I called him and he said, I love it, man. you know? So,
He's a great guy. He's got a great sense of humor
he's
too.
the best. He's the best.
Yeah.
He's the best. I when just hanging out with him. I can you imagine the one thing that's always been a real uh, awesome thing? It's like think about your career, the people you've got to talk to and stuff. And
Hmm.
sometimes you must pinch yourself and say, "Holy shit, this is someone I idolized in radio or in writing or in comedy or something." I've had that moment where I've had to cook many times for Massimo. Just like we're in backyard barbecues. The first time I was like, "Oh my god, I'm cooking for Mass." Right? And we knew
Yeah.
each other. But you know what I made? I actually brought him to your radio show. Jerk burgers. I made the jerk burgers
Yes.
with the deep fried
Yes.
wontons, and uh,
Yes.
and he was like, "Oh man, shit, I love these," and it was the best. It was the best making because you think you're not going to go make a pasta for Massimo, although I have, but it's like you want to do the food you love, and he does that for us when we hang out.
Oftentimes in film, you'll see chefs depicted as being self-centered, very much keep to themselves, jealous of other people, and yet what I've seen over the years and a number of chefs that I've interviewed is they're a lot more willing to share and compliment each other than many people would realize. Is that honest?
I think so, and I think too that comes with experience, and I think being well traveled, and no different than any other job, doing your 10,000 hours. However, sometimes I think there's a lot of cruel people in the business. I think there's a lot of um, I really admire the women in the industry because they're incredible and they had to put up with so much bullshit, coming up that was really not fair. Uh, but I think chefs, when they're at the top of their game, are the coolest because when you get to hang with them outside, you think we're all going out and having 11-course meals and critiquing how the skin was done on the fish. We're out eating wings and drinking beer and going to a club and listening to music and laughing and
Yeah.
treating each other like garbage and laughing, like I love
Yeah.
that, and I could give you stories about a lot of them, and it's been great. I remember one time I did for many years I did the Shellfish Festival in Prince Edward Island, and
Wow.
it was so much fun. I would fly out on the weekends to work. I mean, I really had a blessed job, but I was working with Mark McEwen that weekend. He's so much fun to hang with. We've always had such fun, but I'll remember that he did a big gala event, and I was emceeing it, and he had his team of chefs too. Then one of the restaurateurs there said, "Oh, I want you guys to come to dinner after." And of course, we'd been working all day, not them more than me. But we went out for dinner, and he goes, "I've got an 11-course meal for you." And I went, "Oh my God." No, like you feel for them because they just want to make their people that they idolize happy about their own food. But no one wanted to do it, right? you know?
Yeah.
And I remember looking at Mark, and they called him Batman because he'd sit there and he'd be somehow asleep, but his eyes were open. I don't care that I told the story; he might kill me, but I think it's the
That's funny.
funniest thing I've ever seen. And I saw it because his back was to the window of the kitchen, but I see the chef looking out if we're eating the food, and I notice Batman across from me is asleep, but he can't see that he's asleep, right? So I'd see him walking, I'd sort of kick him under the table, like, "What?" And I go, "The chef's coming." He's like, "Oh yeah, okay." So he'd shove a little food in his mouth and goes, "Brilliant." It was great. It was great. Anyway,
Yeah.
stupid story.
Ted Wallachin returns in a moment.
Fashion to go for men on the go. Hey, it's Ted Wallachin for Tom's Place. If you need to refresh your wardrobe this spring, there is no time to waste. Visit Tom's Place and check out the new spring and summer fashions. At Tom's Place, even the new arrivals are on sale. Spring colors, new patterns, new designs, designer slim fit suits sold elsewhere for as much as $8.99 each are now 3 for $1,200. No, let's check that to 3 for $1,100 at Tom's Place. And if a wedding is on your schedule, we've got a lot of great suits, perfect for your style and your budget. Available in multiple colors, and if you need a matching vest, just ask. Or if you prefer something more formal, how about a tuxedo, starting at only $5.99. Finally, we have selected sports jackets at 50% off. Say hello to spring suit fashions at Tom's Place. Get yourself a deal at Tom's Place on Baldwin Avenue in Kensington Market. We'll suit you. Have you been tasked with the role of a state executor or expected maybe in the future you will be? Well, if so, let me make your life a lot simpler by introducing you to my friend Debbie Stanley. Debbie is the founder of ETP Canada. They specialize in estate administration. Their goal simply is to help Canadian executors understand their role and how to deal with the loved one's estate. Let's face it, there's no school for this, but ETP Canada offers services such as executor support, estate accounting, and they have a new online course called Executor Ready. It's an engaging video designed to make estate administration easier and affordable. And those are two comforting thoughts during a stressful time. So call Debbie Stanley at 1-866-309-0387. That's 1-866-309-0387. Or you can get her at info@etpcanada.ca. That's info@etpcanada.ca.
Now back to Ted Wallachin.
There's a lot of concern now of food wastage, something that we should have been paying more attention to over the years. And there's food wastage in different ways. There are the typical consumer who goes out and buys food without looking in his fridge and seeing what, or her fridge, and seeing what they really need and what proportion sizes. And then there's food wastage in restaurants where there was a time when restaurants would overserve. They would bring you a meal, let's say pasta, and it's like there's enough pasta there for 2 3 people, and you can't always take food home with you because you may be going somewhere else, and some food just doesn't travel and carry overnight, etc. We seem to be paying more attention to that.
I think it's
Would
a.
you agree?
I agree, but let's speak the truth. Um, I walk that walk. I talk that. Well, I walk that walk. I uh, I talk the talk. I don't always walk the walk. I'm guilty too, and that should be because I see, at home how much we use. That's how much we throw in, and it really bothers me, right? And
Yeah.
and I try. It's hard with a family of four, busy with dance and basketball and music lessons, and we're busy. Um, but there is so much waste, and it bothers me. I'd like to be like a European. Like the French are very good this in big cities like Paris of just buying what they need for the day. I've always thought
Yeah.
that was really smart, and everyone's like, they buy 3 baguettes a day. Well, that's what they eat, 3 baguettes in a day with a little meal. If they have some left over, they have it with their breakfast with jam. Like, like I like that, but it's not. We're in the big box mentality, uh, and if you're going to buy a steak, you buy 7 or 8.
Well, it's also too not convenient to go shopping every day. I mean, it's
I know, and that's
quite
the thing.
honestly,
Yeah,
you can't. Not everybody lives in a village where you can just get out of your house and walk 2 blocks and bring home fresh
hundred
produce or fresh
percent.
fish.
I live in the
You know,
suburbs too. Ted, that's absolutely true. I'm guilty too. What the answer is, I don't know. I think we do have to talk about that lately. I just worry that if in advertising now they're going to make that the big thing because it is the big thing to be in advertising. This is a way of life we have to think. And you see the last year, like Ukraine and this crap you're seeing around the world that makes you so upset. And we're worrying about, oh, I'm throwing out more. Think about it. like like that's the one thing that I learned the most being in Italian food about waste was I know when I make a dish doing Italian food, I can actually stretch it sometimes 3 days in different ways.
hmm
You know, like if with through soups and it really appeals to me because you can it I think day leftovers taste fantastic too, and if you know how to cook a bit, it's even better. There's got to be a better way, you know. Yet when I do corporate, dinners and lunches, what do I do with all this stuff? I have to impress people that are coming in from, very important spots. But then I have this stuff. What do I do? Well, I save, but again, how much fridge space do I have? Not an excuse, but I think it is something we all have to, even if it's one little thing, be cognizant of how we do things.
I want to talk about 2 things to you about. I want to talk to you about a number of things, but two specifically now, in regards to the young people who approach you that you teach or that you lecture.
Yep.
What are you seeing in? Because I'm seeing 2 things: people who really have a passion for food, and the other ones who watch Food Network because they want to be television stars.
All I have to say is that anyone who's worked in broadcasting in Canada, because I've been on that side too, have fun making money. you know, like I certainly have done a lot better on this side than I did on the broadcasting side. And they think if they've got the food and the broadcasting, they've got it made. Good luck.
Yeah.
The thing is, I say, well, okay, follow me. Get up at 4:30 in the morning and drive to Hamilton, Ontario to do CHCH Morning Live with my friends there who are also up early when I'm driving from the north parts of Whitby. And, have the energy. Be prepared at night, get little sleep that time. You want to be a food star? Then run the circuit. You got to be like the band Rush or something. You got to do 300 dates a year and be treated like garbage for that long until you're noticed. It's not reality. Get really good at get into cooking because you like cooking. You know why I got into cooking?
Yeah.
Really, full force, full head on into food was when my dad died, because I realized I wanted to be in an industry that gives people joy. You know,
Yeah.
I'm not going to change the world of food. I'm not going to come up. I've come up with some good recipes, though, but you know, I just want people. You get into things for the right reason. You know, like that food, man. I've had a lot of offers to do TV. I've said a lot to no to a lot of them because it doesn't make sense, and people don't see it on this side too. That you know, you can maybe build your brand, you know, your brand or the brand you work for, but um, you know, at the end of the day, reality, you have to make a plate of nice food, be it a great sandwich or like an unbelievable Michelin star dish. It all requires a very a deep skill set and a passion for it. And you sure as hell aren't going to get into TV. And I say start in radio first if you wanted with food. If you want to see yourself as a Food Network star, you know why? Because it goes back to this is true theater of the mind. It'll never change. You know, broadcasting, podcasting, if you can explain a dish to someone and they can't taste it or see it, and you can explain it and make them hungry, you got something. You know?
Explain a dish that explain a dish that Christian Pritchard would love to make right now for Ted Wallachin.
Okay, well, Ted, actually, I'm going to do something that first of all, I'll get a slap in the head, half of it from you too, but it's okay. I was out at Starsky in the west end of the city the weekend before last, and I was, you know, I was looking at pierogies, right? And I'm like, oh, I love this stuff, right? And they had all these flavors and all these different makers who made them, and I've never made them myself. I will now, but I got them. So here's my dish. I got some pork, really high quality pierogies. Am I saying it right? Pierogi? Would you say pierogies?
Yeah,
It's different for everyone, right?
Ukrainian is vareniki or pierogi, but pierogies is common. It's really more Polish, but it's either way. It's they're
There
all
you go.
acceptable.
Well, they're all bloody delicious. So that's you know. So I
Yeah.
did that. This is my brunch du jour. So we've been doing a lot of stuff with the family, and I've been traveling. I said I'm going to make brunch for the family. So I did. I boiled up the pierogies and I crisped them up in some oil, so they're nice and crispy. But the fun part was I took my sour cream. I took some hot sauce from Tudo, Calabria, in the south of Italy. It's a vinegary, spicy, sweet, and mix it into sour cream. A little bit of maple syrup on the bottom, on the top. I took some apples in a pan, got the natural sugars out by with apple, bacon, like big chunk Italian bacon, pancetta,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
what else? Some onion. Got that on top, and then just to get really funky, I did some cilantro, the root, like the just on top. It was like unbelievable. And you know, a glass of
You
wine.
know, for people who've never had pierogies or vareniki, potato dumplings is what they are. Typically, it's potato and cheese.
Yep.
Although you can do them with strawberries or with cherries. You
Blueberries.
can do it with jalapenos, blueberries, whatever you want put in. You can put in there.
Yeah.
The thing is, if you've only eaten them from a box that have been manufactured at a factory, and God bless the people who do their best,
Yeah.
and then you try some that somebody has made by hand, you would think that you're eating two different kinds of foods. There is no substitute for fresh pierogies versus frozen
And you know what?
if
And
it's
you see,
done well.
there's
And it's
food.
tough to do.
Yeah, and there's food in a nutshell too, because I love these are the things. This goes right back to the question you asked about people doing, you know, food or being a food star on TV. You have to go through all this stuff with your, it starts with your family. The way you just said it
Yeah.
to me is, you know, that made me more excited because I'm like, what I would give to be, you know, to learn something from like your grandmother or something, you know. I've been
Yeah.
fortunate enough to learn how to do pappardelle pasta from a nonna at an agriturismo in Tuscany. And I was doing it wrong and she whacked me on the hands. And it was like, it was great. Seriously, because I was impatient. And you know what?
Yeah.
These are the stories and the things that we get to bring and learn from. And that's the thing. What I give to, you know, like you know, I'm from an English family, and my nanny was an unbelievable. Everyone says, "Oh, English food sucks." I'm like, whatever, you don't know. my nanny was a phenomenal cook, right? And the thing was, uh, her Yorkshire pudding is like the greatest thing ever. And I've made it a million times. And you know what, Ted? I honestly don't think I want to make it right because I don't want to destroy the memory of how bloody good it was. I'll never
Yeah,
forget
yeah,
it,
yeah,
you know? And
yeah.
this is all, it's all relative. It may sound flighty and arty and all that stuff, but I truly believe it. You learn the best from these things. And and my wife Kim, she's an unbelievable concert musician and a great educator. And she's always frustrated with me because I always ask when I meet people, I'm like, "What's your background?" And she's like, why do you always ask that?" I said, "Well, I know we're all Canadian. We're all born here. We're all proud of that, right?" And they'll say, "Oh,
Right.
I'm Portuguese, or I'm this," because to me, it's a gateway drug to learning about new food from other people or what they ate. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? It's,
yeah.
and I don't feel embarrassed for it because I'm proud of who I am and where I come from, and I think most people are. So they like to share in these things. That's the culture. That's what I think that the generations coming up. Yeah, we all shun upon everyone taking Instagram pics, but you know what? It's going to change the industry. It's going to change how people view food, and we're so damn lucky living in Canada, and especially in Toronto with what we have. I
Yeah.
always love coming home. You know.
Christian Pritchard is my guest. You do a lot of work for a number of different brands.
Yep.
Let's talk about your association with some of those brands
Please.
because I think it's important.
Oh, it sure is. Pays my bills.
For more reasons than that, and we'll
Yeah.
get into that.
Okay. Well, right now, um, I am at the oh, I'm at the most enjoyable part of my career. I'm the executive chef for Aurora Importing, Italian Canadian company started in 1955 by Mr. Nunzio Tomino, who passed away last year at the age of almost 94. How did a Canadian boy, first generation Canadian English descent, from the beaches end up, being the face of Aurora and Italian food? How bloody lucky am I? Well, it was a passion.
Yeah.
I jumped knee deep into it, and what I try to do working for this company is respect every region and I do everything. The bringing to the marketing side of the business is because Italy's so ancient, and it really is like 21 countries. What is old is new again to somebody. People know Italian food as pasta, pizza, and all great things. We can go on those forever, but when you get into other regions, and Massimo could tell you stories, being from Cremona, using butter with risotto and his beet risotto, and man,
Yeah, his
I've been,
beet risotto is
yeah.
awesome.
Oh, he's sick. He's amazing. But that's the thing, and it's been. I also work for a much larger company that owns our company, and the owner is my boss, and we don't really talk publicly about it because he's quiet with this stuff. But man, he's enabled me to be an ideator who's been able to come up with new concepts on food, try to expand upon the businesses that we have in creative ways. I never dreamed that I would have had a job where creativity is not shunned upon. You know, it wasn't looked at just by accountants. Although it's very important, I'm not good at that side, but they enabled me. I don't like that word enable. I'm given the gift of being able to come up with new ideas and new ways to showcase what I truly love. I love all food, but Italian really is my game. I love it. I absolutely love it. And I love the culture. I love the different cities. And it's funny. The joke is always with people. People like some people don't get me, and they'll say, "Oh, look, you're trying to be Italian." I go look at my car. I drive a Mini Cooper with Union Jacks on it. Is that is that a guy trying to be Italian? No, I love your culture. I'm not going to change who I am, but I won't change what I love.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you like to work with young kids because young kids are so curious and they're not afraid to ask questions that adults may be afraid to ask because they don't want to look as though they're unintelligent
No, they're the
or
best.
they're ignorant about it. but young kids are. It's like, what is that? Why do you put that in there, Huck? What is that? What is that? What is that?
It's funny because I still feel like a little kid. Like I see
Yeah,
myself aging, and I see my boss, who I respect as a human being. First of all, he's a little kid to me too, just his energy. You're a little kid asking questions. So when you get to work with kids, it's awesome because you're right. There's no filter, you know, and they say
no,
stuff. And I think the coolest thing is too, my wife teaches out near the zoo in Scarborough, and like 95% of her kids are Tamil. And from that, and it's amazing. I've taught in that school, so you'd be cognizant of religions and things. And when I say cognizant, I'm not careful. I'm just respectful. So, but
yeah,
pasta and tomatoes, and it's amazing how great kids are when you go in and you've got an eggplant. And I I'm fortunate enough to be able to say it in three languages just from working in Italian and French and English. So melanzane and aubergine and eggplant. And then these kids who are children can say it in six languages.
yeah, yeah,
It's amazing. And you know what I
yeah,
love? And that's exciting for people like me that work in food, to see kids of different cultures that are actually excited about food because it tells the story of their family, and growing up in a real waspy neighborhood, not to knock it, it was wonderful. But we didn't grow up in a food culture. We ate, we had Christmas dinners and I'm talking about my friends and stuff too, but it was always cool going to like my friend Benji, whose family was Italian, or I didn't have a lot of Indian friends because where I live, but now my son, my daughter, like my son's one of his best friends is from Bangladesh, and like it's so with the during Eid they brought over food. Just that's what they do, And I was like, oh my God, this is so good. It was hotter than a bugger. I thought I was gonna die. It was so great. But so you bring back the dish, and this is again, it's just the kids, the enjoyment of it. I'm like, did I put enough chili flakes in? Because you can
yeah.
think of families and kids that can eat stuff that could level a house with heat. Like I'm really excited about it. And you're right, kids are awesome. Kids are awesome,
Yeah,
and they have the best questions when they see you on TV or anything too. And then some stuff, and I've learned the phrase that's actually important. If you don't know, you don't know. I don't know. Let me find out. They're
yeah,
amazing. It's exciting for
yeah,
food because and I see it right now working with Aurora is that we've always been terrific to that the Italian families that came over. They like every culture, you just wanted a little piece of home, and everyone can relate to that. I can relate to that being English. I wasn't born there, but I grew up in Bovril. I can give you a whole bunch of examples of stuff. We all have them from our cultures that we learned from our family. These kids know it and they live it and they love it, and they're not trying to be eating the bologna and the white bread like us. They bring their lentil and chickpea to school, and everyone's like, "Cool."
yeah,
It's cool, and no, and you know what? And the thing is, if anyone gets shunned or any racist stuff about food, other kids are like, "Shut up." You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's not a
yeah,
perfect world, Ted, but I think food can make things a little bit better. So can music, so can
yeah,
comedy, but food's
yeah.
important.
I agree.
Yeah.
Tell me again when this event is coming up with you and Chef Massimo Capra.
June 19th. We haven't even announced it yet, but hey, exclusive. We're going to do it at Capra's restaurant on June 19th. So you can, follow Massimo's Instagram handle, which is Capra's Kitchen, or mine, which is, excuse me, Chris Cooking Canada. And we'll let you know too. And, maybe I'll send you a note.
Which is a great restaurant, by the way.
Oh,
If you've never been, for those people who've never
understatement.
been to Capra's Kitchen, it's the food there is awesome. It
And
really is.
it's a family restaurant, man. And,
Yeah,
he's had a lot of bad things happen in life, as you know too, and the love is still in that room, and it makes me really happy when I go there for them because him
yeah.
and Rosa, and they're great. And God, again, I have to pinch myself. I have to look over and I'm working next to Massimo. Of course, he still says my food's shit, but that's okay, right? Like, what the hell do you know about King? It's like, it's
Yeah,
great. I mean, but I have to pinch
yeah.
myself and say, man, I'm standing beside. Some people have idolized musicians. I do too, but to get to work with people that you grew up watching and eating TV or eating their food, what an honor.
It's been a real pleasure chatting with you. It's been a while since we chatted, and I'm glad that we had an opportunity to hook up, Christian. And I wish you all the best, my friend. And Maybe we'll drop by on the 19th and say hi to you in Moscow at the same
Ted, I
time.
think that'd be great. I'd love to see you there, and we'll send you a note when everything goes down. But again, this is so great to be able to talk on a much broader level, and I love this, and it's just great being uh, sh- doing some fun stuff with you again.
Is there a website people can go to and find out more about you and the kinds of things that you're doing and where you're
Yeah,
going to be?
I think Instagram's the most fun way to do it. I love Instagram because it's pictures. It's my whole life. It's the food. It's the music I love. Play rock music with my son who's 15, so we have fun. Chris Cooking Canada on Instagram. Love to see you there.
Thanks again, buddy.
Thank you.
Well, that's going to do it for us for another week. Thank you very much for spending some time with us. Hope you'll come back again next week and pass the word around, introduce your friends to our program, and you can go on to our website, www.tedwallishin.ca. You can access all kinds of programs from the past, and there's some great information on there as well. And don't forget to go online, fill out your organ and tissue donation card. You could change or even save a life. In the meanwhile, have a great week.
The Ted Wallachin Podcast has been brought to you by Tom's Place. For the finest in men's clothing at unbeatable prices, it's Tom's Place at 190 Baldwin in the heart of Kensington Market. Tom's Place will suit you. And ETP Canada, providing estate administration with ease. The Ted Wallachin Podcast is produced by me, Becky Coles. Technical production by Paul Gatt. Music by Bike Thieves. For more information on this podcast and our sponsors, and to talk to Ted, go to www.tedwallishin.ca.